Hello, friends. Welcome to Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is the long haul, battling loneliness and crisis in trucking with my friend, Dr. Gina Anderson. How's it going, Gina?
Hey, it's going well. Thanks for having me today. This is going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a great topic, a depressing topic, but I think you can bring some brightness to it. So, Gina, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Yeah, my name is Gina Anderson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Luma Brighter Learning, and I'm calling in from Charleston, South Carolina. And yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Charleston.
It's always beautiful down there. A little hot, but beautiful. So what does your company do? Luma, you said you're the CEO of Luma Brighter Learning. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we work in the transportation and logistics industry to really help streamline education and learning through our learning management system. So we specifically work with drivers and warehouse workers and dock workers and really any person at an organization in a fleet to help them with their safety and their educational experiences.
Yep. And I know, but before we hit the record button today, we talked last week too about this, is the idea that sometimes training, especially the kind that you guys do, can just become check the box. Yep, we got it all in order. We got everybody trained. Check, check. But does it really move the needle on job satisfaction or safety or any of the things that we ideally will get better at through that training? And I know you have a passion for this topic. So talk about that for just a sec.
Yeah. So really, the real problem that I see is that drivers are more and they're worth it more than just a check the box. And the reality is that fleets really, and it's not their fault, but they see education and training and content providers as the same thing. And they're really not. Really, the differentiator is learning science. I'm a learning scientist and I study the brain and how people learn. And it's critical that we understand how our brains react and interface in these moments. And that's why this topic is personally passionate for me because I see what happens to our brains.
Yep. Let me tell a quick story. And I always think this is telling about how check the box culture can get. I had a professor when I went to University of Michigan. He was he was a PhD of education. I was getting my master's there. And one of the nuclear facilities in the area said, hey, to this professor, would you come and help us with our education? Because we have all this ongoing, continuing ed requirements. You have to do it. Otherwise, you don't get to keep your facility up. And so he got there and he said, I'll just observe what you're doing. And he said, yeah, imagine a room full of guys just all sitting there and somebody's at a podium reading aloud from a book. And he said, and he goes, and I thought, no, surely this isn't going to go on for an hour. He goes, these guys are head down, sound asleep while somebody reads a boring book to them. And so he said to the guy, he goes, what are you doing? He goes, I can't believe what I just saw here over the last hour. He goes, we have to teach them everything in this book. It's what's required. And he goes, but just because you said it doesn't mean it's in their brain now. He goes, we have to tell them all this. And he goes, yeah, but just because you said it doesn't mean that it means anything to them. And I remember thinking, oh my God, how many of us have been in one of those mindless training sessions where you go, yep, I'm going to be able to say I went to the Six Sigma class.
You know what? That's why I got into trucking, honestly, because I was going out and observing how truck drivers were being trained. And Joe, I was horrified. I sat through a specific class, just like you were talking about, where I sat through 3 days of mind-numbing information where the drivers were actually sleeping. The lights were off and they were sleeping. And then even more so horrifying is what they were giving keys to a semi, an 80,000 pound vehicle. And I asked one of the drivers, what do you remember? Because I know about information processing and how much they remembered every day they lost certain information after that. And the drivers, I'll just ask my manager later. And I'm like, oh my,
yeah, and
there's something wrong.
There was something that professor used to say in the classes regarding long-winded stuff like I like to do, which is the brain won't absorb what the ass won't endure.
Oh, I'll tell you what the brain won't do. Like, honestly, you can only retain. I don't care how funny you are. I don't care how you say that information, even if you want to learn it, your brain can only hold on to so much information before it goes into your long-term memory.
Yep. I am very so I think of what I do on this podcast as education, and I always try and make it the same format, and I always like the idea of focusing on the problem first and then the solution. And I think it can be in a little bit of a story format or a conversation. I think it's just the retention is better. I just that's how I prefer to listen to things. And we've seen podcasts like Joe Rogan just explode. But it's not just Joe Rogan. There's a ton of podcasts out there. I just listened to Ezra Klein this weekend. He's a New York Times guy. I don't necessarily agree with everything he does, but he does it really well. And I thought, yeah, we've been told by everyone that we are in the TikTok culture and that we can only concentrate for 15 seconds at a time. How are guys like Joe Rogan and Ezra Klein creating 3-hour podcasts that we're listening to?
Here's the thing. You have to create from a learning science standpoint. There's very specific things. And what you're talking about, there's two things. The one thing you're talking about is emotional resonance. If you think about something, think of where you were at 9/11. You never forget that moment because it created emotional resonance. When your synapse, when that happens and you've created that strengthen of that power of that connection, you'll never forget it. The second thing that created that you're listening for that much time is authenticity. There's something meaningful in that specific podcast that you're listening to that you have engagement in and you have in that you want to listen to it. So those two things are instrumental in that moment. So yeah, I can talk the science all day about the why that is. And again, everyone's different.
Yeah. And we've all been also to training that especially if you've done the sales training, where it can feel like, rah, yeah, go get them, go get them. And you walk out and you go back to your desk. You're like, I get 80 emails today. While I was doing cheers down the hall, I had my job continued. So anyway, Gina, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Luma Brighter Learning.
Yeah, so I grew up, do you know where this is a trivia pursuit question if you don't know this. Where's Michigan City?
In Indiana.
It is in Indiana. You win, Joe. Yeah, most people don't know that.
I've made that ride. I've made that drive a million times. I have family in
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
okay. That's where I grew up, right outside by Gary, Indiana. I grew up there. I didn't have much. I actually grew up with my grandpa and my mom in a house that my grandpa's parents built. So I didn't have much growing up. That sign behind you says it all. I had a loving grandpa and a loving mom, and I have a brother, and we grew up in Michigan City, and I always had a passion for helping people learn. I was in high school and I worked with the class that had special challenges, and there was just something about those my peers at the time, they were same age, who couldn't tie their shoes, who couldn't write their name, who couldn't speak, that I really wanted to understand what was different about their brains. Like, why was it that person could not tie their shoe, but I could, or they couldn't write their name, but I could? So at a very young age, I had this desire to really understand our brains. I really wanted to see what the impact was and the differences. So I went into a field of special education in my undergrad, and I really wanted to understand why there were people with special needs and how could we help them? Like, what could we do to help them and have them live their best life? And so that's where I started my career. And I just had this burning desire when I was a teacher to help even more people. Like, I really wanted to expand my career. So I went back. I got my doctorate, my master's degree in instructional systems technology and learning science because I wanted to see how we could leverage technology. I didn't grow up with computers. I'm in the generation that we had word processors. Cell phones or smartphones are new to me, right? So I think it's just a matter of knowing how the
I'm from
good
the
and the
fax
bad. Like,
machine generation that we were pretty
okay.
impressed with that.
Yeah, and the DVDs. I still have a DVD player. I don't know, or VCR. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but yeah, so that's really where I came from, and I just saw a real need to help people.
So when and why did you start Luma Brighter Learning? How did you make this leap from being a teacher who was going back to school to working in the trucking business?
Yeah, so I always debated with my husband. He's an engineer. And he was getting his PhD in engineering at Illinois. I was always amazed about how engineers are taught. It's similar to that class you described where a book is read to them and they're just supposed to
I
know.
went to engineering school, trust me.
That's it, but that's not how people learn. So how is it that they can get through school? So we would debate this and we decided to create a technology that actually infuses a lot of interaction modes to help all people learn. And that to me, we started the company in 2008 in higher education. And I was invited to go observe how trucking companies were training. Our company was located right next to another company that was serving the industry. And they said, you should go, Gina, you should really go. They saw the stuff we were doing. They're like, you need to check this out. And I was horrified. I also not only was horrified because of what I saw and how it misaligned to how people learn, I saw an opportunity that we could really help. And so that's why we're here.
Yep. And you mentioned you grew up close to Gary, Indiana. And I made that trip. I have family in Wisconsin, so I've made that trip 1,000 times. From Detroit to Wisconsin. You go right through Chicago.
What do you remember about the area? What's I bet
Trucks. It's if you're on 994 driving through Chicago from Detroit to Wisconsin, you take 94. It's when you're driving in parts of Michigan and even Indiana, you're like, okay, this is kind of a lot of fields out here, a lot of corn, right? And then you get to Gary, Indiana as the beginning of the Chicago congestion. And you go, why am I the only one not driving a truck? So you grew up, whether you like it or not, right in Truck City.
I did, and I actually started Luma in South Bend, Indiana, so that's why I got to observe a lot of trucks.
Oh, yeah, don't with Notre Dame. I love that place.
That's right, our office was right there. People would come see me just to see the stadium. They didn't really wanna see me, they wanted to see Notre Dame football.
I
So
love it. I love it. So getting back to it, what problem are you solving for these trucking companies you work with?
yeah, so we're really trying to solve changing behaviors, making fleets have a more safe culture, helping them be more compliant, helping them really engage and retain drivers. And you do that all through learning.
And it's beyond check the box. You're the anti check the box
Oh, you
solution.
don't wanna be connected to me if you're a check the box, because with learning, you have to tap both the heart and the mind. So, yeah, absolutely.
So again, today's topic is the long haul battling loneliness and crisis in trucking with my friend Gina Anderson. And you had a lot of interesting insights into how unhappy our drivers are. Talk about that.
Yeah. So back in 2023, when the Surgeon General released a report about how 1 in 4 adult humans were lonely, I was really out, Joe. I was observing how, where is everyone? There's no one in the neighborhoods, there's no children out. It's not surprising people are lonely. We did a research study. We have over 600,000 drivers in our system. And I really wanted to understand like, where are the drivers at? Like, what do they want to learn about? And honestly, how many fleets really ask drivers what they want to learn about? I ask people this all the time. It's like they don't even ask them. So when I asked the drivers and we found out the topics they wanted to learn about, I guess I was a little surprised, but not really knowing that people are lonely. They wanted to learn about depression. They wanted to learn about caring for elderly parents. They wanted to learn about financial wellness. They want to learn about gratitude, all these social emotional topics that are important to everyone, but also drivers. And this is not just like back in 2023. I think this is a residual from my observations and talking and being out in the wild talking to fleets from 2020. And we're 5 years beyond it. And just this 2 weeks ago, there was the World Happiness Report that just dropped and says this is the first time in the history we're showing that the US is not as happy as we once were. So this isn't just a driver issue, but to me, if you're going to be in an 80,000 pound vehicle or any vehicle, I don't care if you're in a little car, you have to have your mind on the road. You can't have your mind 100 miles away and being stressed and depressed and lonely.
And I know sometimes when we all go through this as humans, if you have a problem, sometimes going to work, you go, okay, I don't have to think about my problem for a minute because I am working and I don't have time to ruminate about my problem. And rumination is a real challenge all by itself. I think the nature of what the drivers are doing, they're by themselves for so many hours driving. It gives you a chance to ruminate about some of the challenges in your life, whatever they might be. And I think if you throw in the loneliness and the all those open miles where you just think about what's going on in my life. And if you have a sick family member or financial issues or what am I doing with my life issues? You have plenty of time to think about it. And sometimes we think productively, sometimes we ruminate. So,
Yeah, rumination is something in learning science it's written a lot about and how to overcome those thoughts. But you're right. The reality is you're in your head most of the day as a driver. How many times have you driven somewhere and you don't even know? You get there and you're like, I don't even remember how I got here.
mental habits, you're right. So when we have these drivers, obviously we have to have them trained. There's ongoing training, and a lot of that's related to safety. So I'm take it that's part of what you're getting at too.
Yeah, so safety is something that they have to learn, but here's the thing, like you can't just drop a driver a video on be safe in the parking lot. We all know to be safe in a parking lot. Don't you? Everyone knows that. Or texting and driving. Hey Joe, don't text and drive. That's not an information processing from your long-term memory. You shouldn't text and drive, but you still do it. That's a behavior change. So part of safety is not just thinking about the content, right? It's about thinking about those other elements that tap into the human potential and psychology.
Yeah, yeah. We have to get you have to reach the person. We talked about this last week. We were talking about this topic, which was sometimes you're just aware of a topic that I'm supposed to learn. Oh, the boss says I got to go do this safety training. Okay. I'm aware of the training. And then I could go to the training and kind of sleepwalk through it, check the box. What you're trying to do, it sounds, is I want to reach this person at a deeper level, an emotional level where they say, I actually, as I read through this stuff, I want to be a better driver. I want to be a safer driver. I want to understand the things that make me better so I can be a good driver, make more money, not kill anybody on the road.
Absolutely, because the whole thing is we are not check the box. We're treating these drivers like check the box, and this is why they're depressed, right? This is one of the reasons why they're lonely because we're not touching them at a human level of connection. So to have someone be safe, we just saw this research study from 2 weeks ago come out from Geotab about drivers feeling stressed out because they're so stressed out because of all the nuclear verdicts and everything they're under a lot of pressure. Why not recognizing that and saying, let's build this learning community together and giving them opportunities to know how to do that so that the driver is central to the learning. They're not an afterthought. It's okay. We want them to be safe. They're central to the learning
Yep.
experience.
So you've said that drivers are depressed and lonely, and you said the Geotab that their research kind of confirms that.
Yeah, their research that they just put out a few weeks ago that surveyed drivers said they're stressed out. The drivers are stressed out. They're feeling depressed. In fact, one of the reasons I started my podcast 2 years ago is because I had drivers reaching out to me specifically saying they needed resources. We're talking about serious mental health.
What is your podcast?
My podcast is I Love Learning, and I actually started it because I wanted to showcase on my podcast show that you can have any hurdle in your life. You can be feeling lonely and depressed, but there are other people who have felt that way and to give you strategies to help you overcome those hurdles. Because the reality is drivers are asking. They're asking for these resources, but the fleets are just connecting with them on safety, which is important, but you have to ask the drivers what they want and you have to couple that so that they can be more safe. Because if their mind is not focused, if they're not feeling supported, if they're stressed out, how can they be focused on driving?
Yep. Yep. I think also how difficult it is to be on the road 600 miles from home if you have a sick child, if you're going through some marital problems, you got to fight with your girlfriend or your boyfriend. How difficult is that? And then you throw in all the stress of the road. Driving is stressful.
Right. think about this, Joe. How I can't remember the year that CB radios were taken out of the trucks. You remember the CB radios
Oh,
where
of
the
course.
drivers would talk and have these that's relationships. They're having those authentic moments of connections that are meaningful and impactful in the moment. Maybe they took them out of the truck because they're saying they're distracted. But the reality is they're missing that. And so technology can bring that back. But we have to consider that people need to be connected. You can't take away those tools.
People want to be part of a community. It's one of the things. There's a YouTube guy. I got to get him on the podcast. He said he'd come on. His name's Mother Trucker.
I know Mother Trucker.
and
Yeah.
and I spent a few hours with him at Manifest, not this year, the year before. And I just love that when he goes to a truck stop and says, "Hey, I'm going to be in Kansas at exit, blah, blah, blah," that everyone shows up. And I was like, yeah, because everyone want to be part of something.
Right. Everyone wants to be part of something, something winning and something that's meaningful. And every human wants to be connected. And when they're alone in their vehicles and just with their own minds, we have to create learning communities. Learning is the seed of life. Yeah, that's why they're going there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I mentioned earlier Joe Rogan and some of these other top podcasts. I heard Joe Rogan allude to this one time. He said, because people sometimes say to me, it's like I'm hanging out with my friends when I hear you talking to some of your friends on the podcast. And I think in a lot of ways, our brain doesn't disconnect. It says, oh, we could all be sitting around the same campfire having this conversation. And I think that, and what Mother Trucker does, is he's created a community of drivers and he's educating them. And I love that.
I love that. Education, what he's doing in creating the community of love and education and showing them that you care about them. Because again, he's tapping into what they want. He's tapping into what they're asking for. Getting the feedback from the learner is key because otherwise we're just giving it's just check the box content. It's not meaningful. That podcast is meaningful to you. And I love that.
Yep. So we talked a little bit about we have to do driver safety no matter what. What we want to get is beyond just the check the box where everybody does the superficial, yes, I did what I'm supposed to do. I signed my name, turned in my paper or did it electronically. We want to get to the point where you say, yeah, this training is actually having some sort of meaning in my life and I'm absorbing and getting better. So we've talked about drivers are depressed and lonely. We see always a challenge to recruit drivers, but in addition, we're training lots of drivers. They just leave the business. Please talk about that.
Yeah, again, I'll use a story because I think this is really impactful. We had a fleet who had a driver who his whole life there wasn't a company that connected with him in a way that he could learn and they offered him the opportunity to learn everything in Punjabi. And he stood in their doorway and he cried. And he said, "This is the first time in my life that my daughter does not have to educate me." That is powerful. That is powerful when you can tap into human potential and what they need and what they want. People say, "Oh, drivers leave because of the pay." Yeah, some people, every industry is like that. We have that. Every business has that. Everyone wants to make more money. But when you can help people feel valued and appreciated and cared for, they wanna be part of your culture. They wanna be part of your organization because your organization is more than running them through like cattle and checking the box. I've sat through orientations where you feel like cattle. You feel like the only thing they want is the lunch, and then you send them back to the hotel. This is about creating a community that care for each other and look out for each other and that root for each other, and that is what you wanna create at your organization, and you can do that through learning.
Yeah, and you touched on something, some drivers being from India or somewhere else where the English is their second language. So many of our drivers are from somewhere else, and we have to be able to reach them wherever they're at and educate them. And those little gestures that say, hey, look, we want you to work here and we want to make this a good job for you. That's so important. And
It's so important. It's so important. And I'll say this, I hear all the law. I just heard this like this past week of someone saying, "No English, they have to know English. They can't." But the reality is they don't know English. You can say that all you want, but you're hiring people. You learn best the way you process language and information is in your language that you're native to. And so it's just to say they're not getting that, it isolates them. They're gonna leave.
It's so easy to convert things to other languages now. I've seen the glasses lately where you wear the glasses and they has the translated words scrolling. And so you think, oh yeah, it's very easy to get that done. So we talked about safety, which is what the training's all about. We've talked about the drivers are very depressed. They're lonely. They're quitting jobs. They're not only just quitting your company, they're quitting the industry. And I went to a tech conference, and I won't mention which one. And I talked to all these executives, and every once in a while, I'll say to someone who's the CEO of a tech company, and go, "Oh, you have any kids?" And they say they have kids. I go, "Oh, do you think they'll be a driver?" And then they'll go, "What?" I was like, "You think your kids will go into driving trucks?" They'll go, "No, probably not. No." And some people go, "Oh, I see what you're doing here." I'm not doing it just to make people uncomfortable, but it's telling that it's hard to tell somebody, yeah, you should come into this industry. It's a great job. It can be, but so many people who don't enjoy it after a while.
It's hard work and they're not appreciated. That's the thing. You're doing a hard job.
If you're willing to work as hard as a driver, you can be successful a lot of places right now.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I know just from my previous podcasts, people say, so often we find that drivers are not only a driver, but they're also a contractor. They also are a roofer or a plumber and I know one of the places we're losing them to is warehousing and to terminals. So they say, I drive to this terminal once a week and it's 10 minutes from my house. Why aren't I working here?
Absolutely. The thing is, like, it's a hard job. And so that's why I don't understand. And when fleets don't involve them in their learning, like they're the experts. They're the ones. I was at a North Carolina Trucking Association a couple Fridays ago speaking, and I was talking to a whole bunch of women truck drivers. And you talk about going into the industry and not feeling heard, seen, or valued. And we want to get more women into trucking. I don't know. It's interesting to talk to the driver and say, "What would you need?" And really providing that to
If you
them.
can't provide safety on the road, that's a challenge. And by the way, I go to a hotel, nice hotels wherever these conferences are. The first night, I don't sleep well in the hotel. Sometimes the second and third night, I don't sleep well in the hotel. I'm like, I got to get home so I can sleep. I'm not sleeping in a cab of a truck or the back of a truck where there's noise and where I might not feel completely safe. It's just not an environment that most women are willing to do. Let's face it, most guys don't want to do that. It's a hard life. We got to make it a better gig. Talk for a minute. I know you're familiar with these guys. What is Project 61?
Oh, Project 61, that's Jeremy Reimer. He founded it. And really, what they're trying to do is promote wellness to drivers because the average age of a truck driver is 61, is what the research shows, which is dying. Like the living, and think about that, 61. I'm not far from that. So, honestly, this is an epidemic. They're focused on I did a step challenge. He hosted a step challenge. It was free over the holidays and seeing how many steps you could get, and we all supported. It's a community. We supported each other. But this isn't just physical wellness. Like, it's thinking about physical wellness, mental wellness, financial wellness, and that's really why I support the organization and their mission, because I'm passionate about people living and changing their lives. This is something we need to change.
Yeah, I'll have to get Jeremy on the podcast. Please introduce me. I was at Manifest and I was talking to the owner of a trucking company, and he mentioned it to me. And he said, the guys at Project 61. I was like, no, I'm not.
Oh,
There's
I'll
always a new.
introduce you to Jeremy. Yeah.
When we're losing drivers at 61 years old, if you're dying at 61, obviously you're going to have health issues well into your 50s. And I've always known that it's difficult to eat healthy on the road. I think truck stop food is 20% more expensive than Walmart. And I know I do stop at truck stops. I know the food is upgrading a little. When you buy an apple and it's pretty expensive, I know we have to find a way to say, let's get this so they can eat healthy on the road and ideally get a good night's rest. I know I talked to the guys from Truck Parking Club not too long ago, And they're making it easier for drivers to get parking spots that are safe across the country. And they said it is a huge stressor for drivers that, let's just say you're driving, you say, I have to make it to this 40 miles outside Chicago by nightfall because that's where I'm sleeping. And then maybe there's a traffic jam and all of a sudden your hours are running out and you say, now I don't have a place to stay. And now, especially if it's a bad area where you're like, oh, am I going to pull over because I have no more hours left and I'm sleeping in a parking lot of a sketchy place? That's a horrible night's sleep, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much. Again, they're isolated unless you're going to bring a technology to the table that brings them together for these communities. It's hard because how do they know what to eat unless they've done it and they're successful? And that's their fleet. That's the responsibility of bringing people together to give ideas, have driver to driver communication, because you're right. They're stuck. They're sitting there by themselves in a parking lot that they don't feel safe. What are they going to eat? This is real. This is not, this is what they deal with.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to go over to the McDonald's that are everywhere. I don't know. I've driven down to Florida back and forth a million times, like everyone from Michigan. And it's hilarious when you're on the road, you're like, God, there is a McDonald's every exit. And there's what is that? That Cracker Barrel every other exit. And you're like, is there anywhere healthy I can stop?
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing how to pack and be smart about it. We give little refrigerators away to drivers throughout the year because you have to be able to fit them. You got to fit a cooler or something in your cab to be able to do that. Otherwise, you're relying on McDonald's.
So we've talked about safety. We've talked about drivers are depressed and they're lonely. We've talked about this as a retention problem, not only for the companies they work at, but also retaining them to the industry. And we talked about just Project 61, which just speaks more to the desperate state that they're in. Now, I know some people are listening say, yeah, it's all good, but I need to be compliant. So what do trucking companies need to do to become compliant with the laws of the land when it comes to training?
Yeah. You definitely have to have documentation. We can talk about solutions later, but the documentation is key. How do you know that the person who is taking the training is the person taking the training? That's my question. So I know there are solutions for it, but that is a big thing. If you're going to go to court, you better be able to pull up every record that is asked upon you to show not only what was completed, but all the words. Because if you're keeping your content and training up to date, you'll have the actual training there to show that you're compliant. You have to be, a lot of companies use a partner or use a compliance group to help them be compliant. But to have those records are critical, and you need to have them on demand. You can't just, here's a box of PDFs or whatever, or printed from my printer. It's just not going to work.
So, Gina, one of the things I've talked to attorneys offline, not on the podcast, but I've talked about nuclear verdicts with insurance companies on the podcast. And one of the things I understand happens is they ask, can I see all of your documentation? And a lot of companies don't have that documentation in perfect order, or it's not all up to date. And then they say in a lawsuit, they're like, see this mess, they're just barely compliant, or they aren't. And again, it's a very regulation heavy business. And if a lawyer can show this doesn't look quite right, then they say, now, what do you think their drivers are doing on the road? And that's the problem. If you are in an accident, they're using that lack of great documentation against you. And I think, and it reminds me, I'm from automotive. We have the same thing. We have regulations on top of regulations. And if somebody ever wants to get you, they get you.
Absolutely. If they want it, if they're going to find something, they're going to ask. And if you can't provide record or documentation of training records, they're going to get you.
It's the same with clean out records or scheduled maintenance. It's very difficult
All of
to
it.
maintain. It's hard enough to do the work, and then to document it is even harder. You guys are doing it differently. Let's talk about how you're going about this. Because again, we have a crisis, I think, in this business. The drivers are unhappy. They're leaving their jobs. We don't want unhappy drivers. We want to build happy, healthy communities of drivers. And we obviously want them to live past 61 years old. So, what are you guys doing differently than, say, the other training companies out there?
Yeah, so what's different is everyone in the industry that is quote unquote our competitors are content providers. And Luma's a learning provider, and learning science and psychology is so much different. So let me give you an example. So instead of sending a driver a safety video on be safe in the parking lot, if you're going to send content, it should be authentic. You can take your phone in Luma and scan a parking lot like this. It takes I demonstrated this at Trimble, by the way, and beat all the competition, Joe, that was competing against me in 5 minutes. I won the Trimble Insight demo competition a few years ago. But anyways, that's a side note. I scanned the environment of the Venetian Hotel. You can do this with anything. You can do it with a parking lot. I identified the hazards in the parking lot. Before the driver gets to that parking lot, you can get it dropped in the vehicle. If you're on a device in Luma in the truck, they can see it whether they're in the vehicle or not. You can do it just in time before they leave. If they don't have the technology in the truck, they can see the parking lot. Oh my gosh, how different, right? Versus they know to be safe in a parking lot, you all. Everyone knows that. They just don't know that there's that yellow pole in the parking lot that they're going to have to see and try to maneuver. Authentic learning is key to retention. Emotional resonance is key to retention. Luma brings those in through the technology. You talk about drivers being depressed. Why not connect them in learner to learner engagement? I ask fleets, why don't you do this? And they're like, well, I don't trust the driver. You don't trust them? They're the ones that are on the road. They're the ones that have the content. You have to invite them into the learning experience. Have them discuss what to eat on the road. I'm sure they all know, they all travel the same way. They all have advice of what to do and what not to do. Have them connect. They don't have CB radios anymore, but they have learner discussion boards. You can build, Luma builds a community of learners at an organization. And it starts with the person who's going to administer this. And this is the challenge because most people will train the way they were educated, and that's not how people learn.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, it's easier than ever to say, "Hey, I sent you to training," because it's a video, and you take the people out of it. But I think if you think about how you learned best in your life, it probably wasn't through something that was dry and that was boring. And by the way, I say this all the time. I went to school K through 12 and then off to college. And I remember I never particularly cared about history. I love history now. So if you watch Ken Burns do the Civil War,
Yeah,
you're like, oh my God, there was so much to that. You're like, this is a moving experience where you're like, not now I care about this, but you remember it so much better. And I keep thinking that's the way we should learn about the Civil War, not with a whole bunch of boring books and lectures. Not that I'm against the lectures or the books, but it has to be more than that. It has to be something that connects you.
exactly, exactly. And the thing is, like, instead of just saying, hey, you got to change this behavior, stop texting and driving, you have to send out a reflection to have the person identify, do they know a change is needed? Do they know why a change is needed? And have a coach help them, be along aside of them. And so Luma helps with that. And so really that's what's different. We do more than just learner to content. If we do content, we have a library of micro lessons or little nuggets. That's my mascot. But the thing is, it's about learner to learner engagement, learner to coach or learner to instructor, learner to self, getting the learner involved. Because if we're depressed, that's why I wrote my book, because I want to give people a resource to move their mind
And
forward.
what is the name of your book?
My book is called Thrive: How Learning Can Ignite a New Way Forward. If you want a copy, if anyone wants a copy, I'll send you a copy
Well,
for free.
please
I
send
honestly,
me
I will
a
send you one.
give me the link, and
A
I'll
link.
put the link in the show
Okay.
notes. And anyone who wants to reach out
Okay.
and get that free book, that sounds like a great deal.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to do that because really, for me, it's not about making money. I give the book away for free. I want people to feel better. I want people to be happy. I really do, because this is what's going to save lives, and it's really going to help people live past 61. When you watch someone you love go through that and not be able to go forward, it's horrifying. And you don't want that for anyone you love. You don't want that for anyone that you work with. And to give people the power and the strategies, because that's the thing. People don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't know
I
what to do.
I still struggle with this, but it's the truth. A friend of my daughter's, this is years ago, said, "Hey, Joe, can you get me a job in trucking?" I was like, "Yeah, I absolutely can." I said, Are you in school still?" And he goes, I've got 2.5 years of college and I don't want to finish because I don't know what I'm doing and I got student loans." And I said, "Well, you got to pass the CDL." And I said, "You can't smoke weed." His mom owned a dispensary. And he says, "I don't smoke weed." And I go, "They'll know if you do." I said, his name's Ryan. I said, "Ryan, why don't you we live near Ann Arbor." I said, "Why don't you just go work for one of the cybersecurity companies over there? It's a better job." And he goes, "Because I don't have a degree." I go, "They don't care." I said, "They'll train you." And he's like, "Maybe I'll look into that." I go, "Yeah, please look into it. And if you're really serious, I will help you get a job. But I'm telling you, it's a hard life." He works in cybersecurity for the last 7, 8 years. And I keep thinking, if you have a friend or family member, it's hard to encourage them to drive until we make this a better job. So it's fine if you say somebody else's son or daughter should go do that job. Somebody else's husband should go do that job. That's the problem. When nobody's looking and saying, "This is a great job. Can you get me in?" And again, some people are thriving. I talk to drivers from some great companies, Ruan Trucking. They keep drivers for 30 years because they've created a great environment over there.
Absolutely.
They take good care of them.
Absolutely. We have to care for each other. And you're exactly right. We have to give them the resources, the learning, and the education they need so they can thrive. And that's what's missing. Safety videos are dead. They just are.
Yep. So let's wrap this bad boy up. I'm going to try and summarize, then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend, Dr. Gina Anderson, and we're talking about the long haul, battling loneliness and crisis in trucking. And there are so many challenges we have right now with the truck drivers. We're not taking good care of them. Obviously, safety has a lot of tails to it. Obviously, there's the compliance aspect of it, but there's also people are dying at age 61. We have another safety issue. We have to meet the compliance that is required, but we also have to, again, find a way to connect with this community beyond the check the box training. Drivers are depressed. They're lonely. They're quitting jobs. That's hard to recruit them. They're quitting the industry. We train drivers over and over again. How many drivers do we train just for them to go, "Yeah, that was cool. I did it for a while. I have that experience. Now I can't wait to get out." We have a challenge a problem in this country and in many others with demographics. As people retire, the baby boomers are already past retirement age. Who's going to drive those trucks? Got to make this more attractive. We also talked about Project 61. I'd love to get Jeremy on the podcast, and that is horrible that the average driver is dying at 61. Got to do better. Anyway, put a big old bow on this one, Gina Anderson.
Yeah, I would say this. If you're struggling, if you've lost your passion, if you don't know where to turn and you're feeling lonely, the key to mental health is inside, it's between your two ears, it's your brain. You have the power inside of each and every one of you to make a difference for your life and to thrive and to feel better. You're not alone in your struggles. You're not alone in how you feel. There's other people. Every day you meet somebody that is struggling that you don't know. So I would say this: be kind to anyone you meet and be connected. Be connected in the moment. Tonight, when you're with your loved ones, think of where your mind is and be in the moment with those that you love. Because, like we said, time is fleeting, but we have the time today to make it a good day. So thank you so much for having me today. This has been the best moment of my day, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll make sure I put a link to your podcast, the I Love Learning podcast. I'll put a link to, and now is that about trucking or is that about just learning?
It's about it's focused. I have people from trucking on my podcast, but it's more focused on mental health and moving your mind forward. So I have all sorts of guests. This week I have an accountant on my podcast because people want to learn about financial health and trucking. So it is focused on trucking, but it's all sorts of people.
Yep. And if you give it to me, I will put a link to your podcast, a link to your book, a link to your website and your LinkedIn profile, any other links that you give me. So if somebody's listening today and they say, yes, we want to do this, what does working with Luma Brighter Learning look like?
Yeah, so you connect with us at lumabrighterlearning.com and you are assigned a education specialist to help you think about how you want to design in all the different interaction modes of learning to onboard you. And the one thing, we just had a fleet sign up for us last week and said they heard about our awesome customer success team. We respond in 5 minutes or less to a real person. You're talking to a real team member because our clients are part of our learning family and our learning community. So you can engage with other Luma clients who are doing awesome things with their learning. So that's really what it looks like. You're part of a community. We're having an in-live event in November at our learning lab in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And we just come together and share learning and learn how to do the best things. So that's really what it looks like. And it's month-to-month subscription. You're not locked in at Luma. We don't want anyone locked in. You can walk away anytime. And we have close to 100% retention of clients because the thing is, when you work with us, you realize you're making a difference.
So do you work just with trucking companies or do you work with other logistics companies too?
Yeah, we work with other logistics. So you don't have to have a truck to work with Luma. So we work with retails, we work with food and beverage, we work with large distribution centers, shippers, warehousing. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. So do you know what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from Luma Brighter Learning at?
Oh, okay. Just recently, if any of you were at the Tanker, the NTTC, going to be in New Orleans, I'm actually speaking there on the generations and barriers in neuroscience. Our team is going to be at TCA, the TCA Refrigerated Conference in Colorado Springs in July. We're going to have a busy spring. Definitely, you may see us out and about for sure.
I love it. I love it. I told you before we hit record, but I hope to see you also at the Broker Care Summit in your old neck of the woods in Indianapolis, which is coming up April 28th through May 2nd.
Awesome. I love that.
So I'll make you the introduction over to those guys. Anyway, Gina, thank you so much for taking the time. I love what you're doing. I think it's so important. And I think it's also great that you're bringing awareness to the challenges that these drivers are having. And we got to make this job and this industry better for everybody, for the drivers. And I know we talk about it all the time. And I think I hope it's more than talk is my hope. I know it is with you, but I hope for the industry, I hope it's more than just Driver Appreciation Week.
Exactly. It can't be marketing. This isn't about marketing. It's about changing lives. I'm all in. Let's go. Let's do it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.